Alright guys, so last time we talked about congruent triangles, okay? And so how do we know when triangles are congruent? Well, we learned that those corresponding pieces, like angle A and angle D, have to be congruent. Angle B and angle E have to be congruent. And angle C and angle F have to be congruent. So we have those three angles that need to be congruent. Also the sides, side AB with side DE, side BC with EF, and AC with DF. When we have all those pieces, we can say that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF. Okay, and remember that information of the letter in the same place. Those are the corresponding pieces. If we were to move this triangle over top the other one, that they would match up into be the same places. Okay, same with the sides. Right, like side DE and AB. Okay, that we can learn a lot about all that information. BC with EF, and so on and so forth. AC and DF. Alright, but could we tell if two triangles are congruent if we didn't have all that information? Or in other words, what's the least amount of information we would need? Okay, so if I only knew that angle A and D were congruent, could I say that these two triangles were congruent? Okay, if I knew two angles, if I knew three angles, if I knew an angle and a side, at what point do we have enough information that we lock it in to be congruent, or if at all? Okay, well, this is the answer we're going to answer here starting today and over the next few class periods. Okay, so first thing we're going to talk about is, what if all three sides were congruent? Even if we didn't know anything about the angles, what if all three sides were congruent? Would that mean the triangles have to be congruent? Let's think about that. Okay, so a good way to test this is to take some different pieces of a triangle that are congruent. So these two sides are congruent, these two sides are congruent, and these two sides are congruent. Well, if I take these pieces, and this isn't going to be the easiest because I couldn't print it off very well, and let's say that's a triangle right there. And then we take this other piece and try to match it up so that one works too, kind of something like that. Now, if I took these other pieces and tried to rearrange them, rotate them around, would I always end up with the same triangle? Okay, and that would be the question. Okay, even though it may not face the same direction, would it still be the same triangle based off those pieces? Okay, and if we were able to really do it better than I just did, what we find out is that, yeah, if you have the same length of sides, okay, like here with here, the little guy with the little guy, and this one with this one, it doesn't matter the orientation, but they're going to be congruent triangles. Okay, so this is a triangle congruency rule. Okay, that tells us that if we have three corresponding sides, remember corresponding was the same side, sides of two triangles that are congruent, then the triangles are going to be congruent. Okay, it always works that way. So in this case, are they congruent? Yes. Okay, even if one of them were to be rotated a different way, it would still work. Okay, So, and we call this the side, side, side rule. Pretty simple, right? 3 sides. So if I have the side, 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 if all 3 sides are congruent, the 2 triangles are congruent. Okay? And if I know if 2 triangles are congruent, I know their sides are always going to be congruent. And that's kind of a shortcut as opposed to checking to see if all 3 pieces are congruent. Okay, we usually abbreviate it just SSS. So, let's see how we take a look and use that. So the first thing we're going to do is just practice deciding if 2 triangles are congruent. Okay? And if they are congruent, we're going to decide by what method can we say they're congruent. For right now, all we know is the side, side, side rule. Okay, which there's more that we'll learn later on, but this is where we start. So, here we go. So, what we're looking for is 3 congruent sides. Okay, so we have 1 angle and 2 sides. Okay, so that tells me that it's not enough information for me to say if it's congruent or not, so I have to say not congruent. Number 2, now they share an angle, or in other words have a vertical angle, but that doesn't help me. I only have 1 side, so again, not congruent. Number 3, I've got 3 angles, but I'm dealing with sides, so not congruent. Look at number 4. Now we can see, okay, they have 1 corresponding side that's congruent, a second that's congruent, so 1 side, 2 sides, and a third that's congruent. So yes, they're congruent. How do I know? By the side, side, side rule. Okay? So number 5. Now at first glance you may say, oh, there's only 2, so it's not congruent. But you've got to pay attention because they share a side. And if you share a side, that side is going to be congruent. So we've got 1 side, 2 sides, 3 sides that are congruent. So yes, by side, side, side. Okay. Number 6, 1, 2, 3 sides. So yes, by side, side, side. We can say they're congruent. 7, 1 side, 2 sides, and they share a side. So that makes 3, side, side, side. Yes, it's congruent. Number 8, yes, they share a side, but nothing else. So we can't say they're congruent. Could they be congruent? Yes, we just can't say it because we don't know enough information. Okay? Alright, the other type of problem you may have to do is how can you make it work through side, side, side. So we've got 3 sides we need to look for. We've got 2 of them. So in order for this to work, what has to happen? Well, this last side has to be congruent. So we have to say ln has to be congruent to VT in order for this to work. Okay, that's what would make it congruent. Number 10, we've got 1 side and they share a side. So we've got to say side UV has to be congruent to side TM. Okay, because that's the missing side that we don't have. If that works, that gives us 3 sides, so we can use the side, side, side rule. Alright, so the last one here. Okay, again, so we've got 1 side already. To make these triangles congruent, we should notice we've got that second side as well. So what do we need? We need that third side. So we need side EH to be congruent with side ED, and that'll make it work for side, side, side. Okay, so now you've got a homework assignment, a worksheet to practice this. Shouldn't be too bad. You've got a bit of that triangle congruency as well, so you should have plenty of time. You could probably get this done in class and finish it. So get to work, and if you finish, turn in the worksheet so that we'll be ready to go for the next day. So yeah, there we go. So work hard and get it done.